Okay, so this is my presentation on Duolingo. Um, I took Spanish back in high school and use it here and there whenever I traveled to Mexico, but I've always wanted a refresher course just for fun. I remember looking at Rosetta Stone and the cost was really quite high, so I never really went with it. But I saw Duolingo on the list for assignment number 3, and I have an upcoming trip to Cuba, so I figured that this was a sign. I have no prior experience using Duolingo, so I decided that we would walk through the setup and the start just from scratch, just like I did. Right away, once you download the app, it asks you if you're a new or a returning student, so I chose Get Started. And then there were 7 quick questions that began with what language I wanted to learn. There's actually quite a few options. I was pretty impressed. And then how much of the language I already knew. Next, there's why you're learning the language, in my case, Spanish. And then how much time I was willing to dedicate each day to the lessons. After that, it was off to the races. It starts off nice and easy and has a variety of learning forms. So for this question, I can press the blue speaker button to hear the word that I'm trying to match with the image. I can also click on the word that I'm being asked to translate and actually see the English translation. It may sound like cheating, but you have to remember this is the learning stage, so I feel it's okay. And you don't have to click on the spelling translation if you don't want to. So from here, I'd click on the image of the man and then click continue, and the app congratulates me on being right, and we go to the next question. So the next question is listening and writing. It's asking me to select the English words that make up the Spanish sentence. Again, I can click on the blue speaker if I want to hear how the sentence is pronounced. So I'd click on the man, or well, da, and then man, and press check, and sure enough, it'll tell me I'm correct. And the translations can go from English to Spanish and Spanish to English. You can be asked to translate words or full sentences. And as you get towards the end of a training block, which can be gauged by the progress bar at the top that you see there in orange, the questions do become harder. If you get a question wrong, the app makes you review the error at the end and make sure that you go back to the ones that you missed and correct your prior mistakes. Here's a previous mistake that Duolingo is making me review. Hey, got it right. So there are 4 sessions per unit and 13 units per section, with there being 10 sections in total. The sections and units are grouped according to the subject being taught. Here is one unit, which is forming basic sentences and greeting people. And here is unit number 2, which is getting around the city and ordering food and drink. Duolingo does a good job visually rewarding you with successful answers. You get praise along the way for various types of milestones. So here I got a 5 answer streak, um, 5 correct answers in a row, and I earned a bunch of XP, which is just like points. It times you and tells you how many times you practice listening and how many you got right. So in this case, 94%. This time it tells you that it was a perfect lesson. I got everything right. Again, the time and how many XP or points that I earned. Unfortunately, Duolingo falls a bit short explaining why some answers are right and some are wrong. For instance, I don't fully understand why an apple is la manzana, but milk is el leche, or suitcase is la maleta, and hotel is el hotel. So from my Spanish classes back in high school, I do remember that it has something to do with masculine or feminine, but I still couldn't remember how to tell the difference. And, you know, some explanation on behind why it's right or why it's wrong would have been very helpful. At one point further into my learning, there was a tip screen that was made available to me, but this was the first I had seen anything up until this point. So uh, it was kind of a little too late in my opinion. There were other things that I wish that were explained earlier on. And then when I got even deeper into the app, I was happy to see that there was a button called Explain My Answer. But I was pretty disappointed when I clicked on it and I discovered that they were not willing to explain my answer unless I had the paid version. Which leads me to my next observation. Duolingo made sure that there were frequent prompts around the way requesting that I select or pay for um, or use the paid version. Every time you get a question wrong, it deducts a heart from you. And when you run out of hearts, Duolingo will prompt you again to join the paid version. If you have enough gems, you can use your gems to pay for heart refills. And if you don't have enough gems, then you have to watch advertisements. I found these were mostly McDonald's ads. Okay, so how does Duolingo weigh in on each of the four E's? Let's first focus on what makes Duolingo exciting. I really enjoyed how the setup of Duolingo was quick and painless. The simple 7 questions at the beginning were basically it's surrounded around my learning and thankfully not boring questions about my demographic. And next, Duolingo does a good job exciting the learner by using appealing colors and sounds. Research on playing video games has shown that sound has a considerable effect on physiological arousal in video games. Sylvie Herbert, a psychologist in audiology and speech therapy, found that playing games with the sound on led to higher cortisol levels than playing games with the sound off. Another study revealed that the use of intentional sounds in mobile applications increased evaluations of the app, led to higher app adoption intentions, willingness to pay, and the likelihood to recommend the app to others. But on the flip side, I felt that the constant reminder to purchase the paid version of the app was annoying and it decreased my excitement. I also felt similarly to the redundant clicking of the continue button after each question. I feel like if I got the question right, it should just automatically advance to the next question instead of leaving me having to click continue constantly. For that reason, I give the excitement an A minus for Duolingo. Duolingo has many educating factors. There are listening, reading, and spelling portions that make sure your learning is robust. The app also does a good job on encouraging the learner throughout the sessions when correct answers are chosen. Studies have found that tangible forms of encouragement give students a visual reminder that they have the power to learn and succeed. This can be demonstrated in the app through the congratulatory screens, the earning of XP, and the collections of gem and hearts. Duolingo also makes sure to take the learner back to the questions that they got incorrect. By reviewing their mistakes and ensuring a successful answer is given, they help solidify their learning of the language. The downside of Duolingo's education efforts are that it's not clear on errors and promotes memorization with the lack of explanations. For many questions, I wasn't sure why the answer was correct, but I knew it was correct, so I just chose it. It becomes a game of memory at that point, and then the learner um, just chooses something and lacks understanding of why. Furthermore, to add insult to injury, when you are prompted to have an answer explained to you and you select the option, it tells you you have to have the paid version to have it explained to you. So this is pretty disappointing in my opinion. And for that, I give the education portion of Duolingo a B. Duolingo definitely engages the learner through its KISS design, the whole keep it simple, stupid method. By keeping it simple, the learner can focus on the language being learned instead of trying to figure out how to navigate the app. Albert Einstein once said, "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler." By applying the KISS principle to learning, educators can create efficient, engaging, and accessible learning experiences, which benefit a learner's comprehension on the subject. Keeping it simple also makes it fun like a game. The illusion of winning points and achieving progress throughout units and sections make you feel like you're conquering the game and therefore like beating it. The learner can hopefully get so compelled to finish the game that they forget they're actually learning during the process. The cons about the app were that I could see it being seen as a bit childish with the cartoon characters and the gimmicky points and gems, and I can see this possibly being deterring the older crowd since it has such a kids feel to it. The constant ad watching can be disengaging too. I've put my phone down to let an ad play out and I could not remember to come back to the lesson at all. I realize nothing is for free, but it still doesn't make the app attractive. For all of these reasons, I give it an A minus. To evaluate the learner, Duolingo recaps what was achieved during each lesson. Remember the example of how many times I practiced listening, how long it took me to complete the lesson, and how I scored percentage-wise on a lesson? But the problem is that there's no comparison to where those stats lie amongst other learners. I really would have liked to see where I ranked amongst other learners in terms of that passing percentage and the time taken during a lesson. There's a section that ranks you amongst your peers, but it's based on XP, which is a form of points. This is positive in that it creates a competitiveness and shows you how more time spent in the app, allows you to move up the ranks. But I'm not really sure how quantifiable it is because points don't necessarily translate into how well you're doing at the language. And then finally, Duolingo is lacking a spoken learning method. There's listening, reading, and writing, but there isn't anything, or at least in the free version, that makes sure your pronunciation of the language is correct. So I really would have liked to see something that allows you to be graded on how you're pronouncing the language. And for all this, I give it a B minus in the evaluation department.